Everyone laughed when she kept serving tea politely. But one letter changed her life and shook the entire British neighborhood. The laughter always came from the same place. The golden-lit living room of Lady Catherine's mansion in Chelsea, one of London's most exclusive neighborhoods. Miriam moved silently between the velvet sofas, balancing a silver tray with porcelain cups. Guests, dressed in designer suits and sparkling gowns, barely looked at her. Some whispered jokes about her accent. Others ignored her completely. She kept her head bowed. "Would you like more tea, ma'am?" she asked softly, offering a smile that was rarely returned. To the wealthy residents of Belgrave Street, Miriam was just the African maid. Her uniform was neat, her hands quick, but she was invisible. That night, as she was about to collect empty cups, Lady Catherine, the aging widow who owned the mansion, called her into the study. Catherine looked pale, her silver hair loosely tied. In her trembling hands was a sealed envelope. "Miriam," she whispered, "this is for you. Do not open it until the time is right." Before Miriam could ask questions, a house butler rushed in. "Madam, the ambulance is here." The scene became chaotic as Lady Catherine was wheeled out on a stretcher. Miriam clutched the envelope, her heart pounding. She didn't know it yet, but that small letter would soon upend her entire life. And as the mansion's door slammed behind the ambulance, one of the guests hissed under their breath. "She probably thinks she's special because the old lady trusts her." Miriam held the envelope tightly and looked around. Everyone's eyes were on her. She didn't yet realize how dangerous those eyes could become. Miriam could barely sleep that night. The sealed envelope lay on the nightstand beside her small bed in the servants' quarters of Lady Catherine's mansion. She turned over again and again, staring at it in the faint glow from the streetlights outside. What could be in it? She wondered. The old woman's hands had been so weak, her voice so low, yet the way she pressed the letter into Miriam's palms carried a weight Miriam couldn't explain. By dawn, the mansion was buzzing with nervous whispers. Lady Catherine had been admitted to a private hospital, and her condition was critical. The senior house staff gathered in the kitchen, pretending to be busy but clearly eavesdropping on every call from the hospital. "She won't last the day," the butler, Mr. Hargreaves, muttered under his breath. "And when she's gone, I wonder who gets all of this." He gestured broadly toward the grand marble hallways. The other maids snickered quietly. "Her relatives will come swarming in, that's for sure," Sarah, the youngest maid, said. She shot Miriam a sharp look. "Don't think that letter means anything, Miriam. You're just the help. Don't get any ideas." Miriam didn't respond. She simply lowered her eyes and kept scrubbing the spotless counter. By mid-morning, Mr. Hargreaves received a call. His normally stiff face softened. "She's asking for Miriam," he said reluctantly. Minutes later, Miriam was in a black town car speeding toward the hospital. She clutched the letter in her handbag. Her heart pounded harder with every passing streetlight. "Why me? Why does Lady Catherine want me?" When Miriam entered the dim hospital room, Lady Catherine's frail figure seemed even smaller beneath the crisp white sheets. Machines beeped softly. She turned her head slightly, her piercing blue eyes finding Miriam's dark, tearful ones. "Miriam," Catherine whispered, her hand trembling as Miriam took it. "Do you still have the letter?" "Yes, ma'am," Miriam said. I didn't open it." "Good. You must not open it until I'm gone." Tears stung Miriam's eyes. "Please don't say that, ma'am. You're strong. You'll get better." Lady Catherine smiled faintly, a sadness in her expression. "You've always been loyal, Miriam. When no one else treated me with kindness, you did. This world will try to crush you for that. But you must stay strong." Miriam wanted to ask why she was saying these things, but before she could speak, Catherine's eyes fluttered shut. Nurses rushed in, gently ushering Miriam out of the room. She waited for hours in the cold hospital corridor, clutching her handbag with the envelope inside. Doctors and nurses passed by without a word. Finally, Mr. Hargreaves appeared, his face grim. "It's over," he said simply. Miriam's legs buckled. She sank into the chair, tears streaming down her face. Catherine had been the only person in this country who had ever shown her warmth. Now she was gone. But as she wiped her tears, she remembered the letter. It felt heavier now than ever. What could Lady Catherine possibly have written that she couldn't open while she was alive? And why, when Miriam glanced up, were two of Catherine's distant relatives staring at her with open suspicion from across the corridor? The hospital was colder than Miriam had ever felt in her life. She sat frozen on the chair, watching the nurses wheel Lady Catherine's lifeless body down the corridor. The sight tore something deep inside her chest. She had worked for Lady Catherine for almost 4 years. The old woman had been strict but fair, always ensuring Miriam ate with the staff, paid her salary on time, and spoke to her with respect. In a foreign land where Miriam often felt invisible, Lady Catherine had been the only constant. Now she was gone. As Miriam wiped her tears, she noticed the 2 distant relatives from earlier. Lady Catherine's nephew, Charles Wainwright, and his wife, Helena, whispering a few feet away. Their eyes were fixed on Miriam's handbag. The envelope. She clutched it tightly. "We'll handle things from here," Charles said in a clipped tone as he stepped forward. He was a tall, sharp-featured man in his mid-40s, wearing a navy-tailored suit. Helena stood behind him, arms crossed, her diamond necklace glinting under the hospital lights. "Handle what?" Miriam asked quietly. "Lady Catherine's affairs," Charles replied. "You can return to the mansion and tidy up. The lawyers will be in touch when necessary." Miriam nodded but kept her bag close. Charles's gaze lingered on it for a second too long before he walked away. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere was even worse. The other staff whispered among themselves. Sarah smirked when Miriam entered the servants' quarters. "Do you think you're special now?" she asked. "You were the last one to see her alive, weren't you? What did she say? Did she promise you a reward?" Miriam ignored her and went straight to her small room, shutting the door. She pulled the envelope from her bag. It was thick, with Lady Catherine's elegant handwriting on the front. For Miriam. Her hands trembled as she held it up to the light. She wanted to tear it open right then, but Lady Catherine's voice echoed in her head. "Do not open it until I'm gone." She sank onto the edge of her bed. She was gone. With a deep breath, Miriam slipped her finger under the seal, only for a sharp knock to sound at her door. She jumped. "Miriam, Mr. Hargreaves wants you downstairs," a maid called from the corridor. Miriam shoved the letter back into her bag and hurried down. The butler stood in the grand living room with a group of unfamiliar men in suits, lawyers. Charles and Helena Wainwright were also present, looking smug. "We will be reading Lady Catherine's will tomorrow morning," one lawyer announced. "All family members and household staff are expected to attend." Miriam's breath caught in her throat. The will. The lawyers handed out formal invitations. As Miriam took hers, she could feel Helena's cold eyes drilling into her. "You'd better be careful, girl," Helena whispered when no one else was listening. "If you think you're getting even a penny out of Catherine's estate, you're dreaming." Miriam didn't respond, but her heart was racing as she walked back up to her room. She wanted to read the letter that instant. She wanted to know why Lady Catherine had given it to her. But as she reached for her bag, she noticed something chilling. The envelope was gone. Miriam's heart pounded so loudly it drowned out every other sound in the room. She emptied her small bag on the bed. Lip balm, house keys, a worn-out wallet, but no envelope. "Where is it?" She dropped to the floor, searching under the bed and behind the dresser. Nothing. Her breath came in shallow gasps. That letter was the last thing Lady Catherine had given her. It felt like losing her all over again. Miriam sat back against the wall, clutching her knees. One of the staff must have taken it. But who? She pictured Sarah's mocking smile. Or maybe Charles, who had stared at her bag with that strange intensity. A soft knock on the door startled her. "Miriam, you should get some rest," Mr. Hargreaves' voice came from the other side. "The will reading is at 10 a.m. sharp tomorrow. Don't be late." She didn't reply. She couldn't. That night, Miriam barely slept. She kept replaying Lady Catherine's frail voice in her mind. "Do not open it until I'm gone." What had Catherine wanted her to know? The next morning, the mansion's grand drawing room was transformed. Heavy drapes blocked the sunlight, and a polished mahogany table stretched across the center. At one end sat a group of solemn lawyers in dark suits. At the other end, the family. Charles and Helena Wainwright sat in the front, their expressions carefully composed. Behind them were several other distant relatives Miriam had never met. She slipped quietly into a seat in the back row with the other staff, feeling completely out of place. One of the lawyers cleared his throat and opened a leather folder. "We are here to read the last will and testament of Lady Catherine Sinclair." The room fell silent. "Lady Catherine's estate is valued at approximately £30 million, the lawyer began. "This includes the Chelsea mansion, investments, and personal property." Charles leaned back smugly. Helena clutched his hand. Miriam stared at the floor. The lawyer continued. "Lady Catherine's will contains a single primary beneficiary." There was a murmur of excitement from the family. Charles straightened. already anticipating his name. The lawyer looked up from the paper. To my devoted housemaid, Miriam Adeyemi, I leave the entirety of my estate. The room erupted. What? Helena shot to her feet, her face flushed red. This is absurd. Charles slammed his fist on the table. She was a maid. The other relatives shouted in disbelief. The staff stared at Miriam, wide-eyed. She was frozen in her seat, her mouth slightly open, unable to process what she'd just heard. The lawyer raised his voice to be heard over the chaos. Lady Catherine was very clear in her wishes. The remainder of her estate, her properties, investments, and personal assets, are to be inherited by Miriam Adeyemi, effective immediately. Charles turned, pointing an accusing finger at her. You manipulated her. You took advantage of an old woman. Miriam's hands shook. No, I didn't. I swear. Silence. Helena snapped. We'll challenge this in court. There's no way we're letting you steal 30 million pounds from this family. The lawyers banged the table, trying to restore order. But the relatives weren't listening. They circled Miriam like predators, their voices sharp, their anger boiling. Miriam's chest tightened. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, glaring with hatred. She stumbled out of the drawing room, gasping for air. She had just inherited 30 million pounds, but she had never felt more unsafe in her life. As she reached the hallway, she froze. Standing at the top of the stairs, holding the missing envelope in her hand, was Sarah, the young maid. Her smirk was ice cold. Miriam's breath caught when she saw Sarah at the top of the stairs, casually twirling the missing envelope in her fingers. Looking for this? Sarah asked with a sly smile. Miriam rushed toward her, but Sarah stepped back, tucking the envelope behind her. Relax, she said in a low, taunting voice. I didn't open it yet. But you should be careful, Miriam. Letters like this can be dangerous. People might think you're hiding something. Miriam's heart raced. Why did you take it, Sarah? That letter is mine. Lady Catherine gave it to me. Sarah shrugged. I was curious, and maybe I thought it might be worth something. Now that you're the rich one, I suppose I can negotiate a better arrangement. She slipped the envelope into her apron pocket and walked off without another word, leaving Miriam shaking with anger and fear. By the next day, the news had already spread beyond the mansion. African housemaid inherits $30 million from British heiress, screamed the tabloids. Reporters swarmed outside the gates of Lady Catherine's Chelsea mansion, their cameras flashing. Neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, whispering and pointing as Miriam walked to the door. That's her, someone murmured. She was the maid. Can you imagine? 30 million. She must have tricked the old woman, another said. Miriam kept her head down, clutching her coat tightly around her as she hurried inside. She was used to people ignoring her. Now, every pair of eyes followed her every step. Inside the mansion, things were no better. Charles and Helena had moved out temporarily to consult with their lawyers, but their presence lingered like a storm cloud. The staff avoided Miriam, whispering behind her back. Only Mr. Hargreaves spoke kindly. You must be careful, he warned one evening as they stood in the kitchen. These people will do anything to challenge the will. They're already digging for dirt. Miriam nodded silently. She barely recognized her life anymore. One moment she was pouring tea and scrubbing floors, the next she was thrust into a world of lawyers, reporters, and suspicious relatives. She thought about calling her family back in Lagos, but she hesitated. Would they even believe her? Would they see her differently too? That night, as Miriam stood by the mansion's massive window, she saw something strange. Across the street, in the shadows, a man in a dark coat was watching the house. Her stomach clenched. She stepped back from the glass, her mind racing. Was he a reporter? Or something worse? The following morning, Sarah cornered her in the hallway. You're famous now, Sarah said, leaning against the wall with folded arms. But fame doesn't last. If you don't want people digging up secrets, maybe you should buy a little loyalty. She tapped the pocket where the envelope was still hidden. Miriam stared at her, trembling. What do you want, Sarah? Sarah's smile widened. Let's just say we'll talk after you win in court. If you win. Before Miriam could reply, the doorbell rang. Mr. Hargreaves opened the door to a flood of reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing. But behind them stepped Charles, Helena, and their lawyer, looking grim and determined. We're filing to freeze the estate, Charles announced loudly. This woman isn't touching a penny until the court decides whether that will is even real. The reporters erupted with questions. Miriam felt the world spin. Miriam stood frozen at the base of the grand staircase as Charles's words echoed through the mansion. "We're filing to freeze the estate." The reporters outside went wild, shoving microphones at the doorway as cameras flashed. Charles and Helena basked in the attention, acting like heroes protecting their family legacy. Mr. Hargreaves quickly shut the door to block out the chaos, but the damage was done. Miriam felt like the walls were closing in on her. "You can't do this," she said, her voice shaking. Charles turned, his expression cold. "Watch us," he replied. "We've already spoken to the courts. You won't be able to touch a single pound from Catherine's estate until this matter is resolved. And we'll make sure the will is declared invalid." Helena stepped closer, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "You think you can walk in here from wherever you came from and take what belongs to us?" she sneered. "You're nothing, Miriam. Nothing. And soon everyone will see it." The next few days were a nightmare. Letters from the court arrived, officially freezing all the accounts and assets Catherine had left her. Lawyers called nonstop. Reporters camped outside the mansion gates, shouting questions whenever she stepped outside. "Did you manipulate Lady Catherine for her money? What are you going to do with 30 million pounds? How does it feel to steal from the Wainwright family?" Every newspaper seemed to have her face plastered across the front page. One article even published a picture of her tiny bedroom in the servants' quarters, mocking how unfit she looked to handle wealth. Miriam barely left her room, terrified of making a mistake. But Sarah was thriving. "You're losing, Miriam," Sarah whispered one evening as she slipped past her in the hallway. "The family's lawyers are tearing you apart. Maybe if you gave me a share, I'd help you. After all, I still have the letter." Miriam clenched her fists. "I won't give you a penny, Sarah. That letter was mine. Give it back." Sarah laughed. "I'll hold on to it for now. Who knows? It might be worth more than you think." As the pressure mounted, Miriam realized she couldn't fight this battle alone. She didn't understand the British legal system or how to protect herself. Mr. Hargreaves suggested hiring a lawyer. "You need someone who actually believes in you, Miriam. Someone who isn't just chasing the money. But who would help her?" She barely knew anyone in London outside the mansion. That night, she lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed with another news notification. This one made her stomach twist. Wainwright family hires top barristers to reclaim $30 million estate. Sources claim Maid may be deported. Miriam sat up in bed, panic washing over her. Deported? Could they really send her back to Nigeria with nothing, painting her as a thief? The thought of losing everything, not just the money, but her dignity, the trust Lady Catherine had placed in her, made her chest tighten. As she buried her face in her hands, she heard the sound of footsteps outside her door. Slow, deliberate. Then a soft voice whispered through the crack. "Need help?" Miriam looked up to see a young man standing in the hallway. He was tall, clean-cut, with sharp features and kind eyes. He held out a business card. "James Edwards," he said. "I'm a solicitor. I think I can help you, if you'll let me." Miriam stared at the young man in the hallway, unsure whether to trust him. James Edwards looked nothing like the other lawyers she had met. He was younger, his suit less flashy, his expression calm rather than calculating. "Why would you want to help me?" Miriam asked cautiously. James held her gaze. "Because I know how the Wainwrights work. They've done this before, bullying anyone who stands in their way. And because Lady Catherine was my client once. She was a good woman, and I believe she left her estate to you for a reason." Miriam's chest tightened. Lady Catherine had trusted this man? That gave her a sliver of comfort. I don't have any money to pay you," Miriam admitted. James smiled faintly. "I'm not here for money. I'm here because the truth matters. Let me fight for you." The next day, Miriam walked with James into one of London's most expensive law firms. Her heart pounded as they passed walls lined with gold plaques and receptionists who gave her disapproving glances. She felt so small, like she didn't belong in this world. "Keep your head up," James whispered as they stepped into the meeting room. Inside, Charles, Helena, and their team of elite barristers sat at a massive oak table. Helena's smirk widened the moment she saw Miriam. "Ah, the maid," she said sweetly. "Ready to give up yet?" Miriam swallowed hard and said nothing. James sat beside her, sliding a neat stack of documents onto the table. "We're here to confirm Miriam's rightful inheritance," he said firmly. "Lady Catherine's will is valid and legal. We expect the court to honor it." Charles scoffed. "We'll prove she manipulated Catherine. We have witnesses ready to testify. She was nothing but an opportunist." James didn't flinch. Then we'll see you in court." After the meeting, Miriam walked out into the chilly London air, her hands trembling. "James," she whispered, "I can't do this. They're powerful, they know everyone, they'll crush me." James stopped and looked her straight in the eye. "Miriam, you've survived worse. Lady Catherine believed in you when no one else did. Now you have to believe in yourself. You can win this." Over the next week, James began teaching Miriam about the world she had been thrown into. He showed her how to manage bank statements, respond to legal documents, and handle the media. When a tabloid journalist cornered her outside the mansion, James calmly intervened. "No comment," he said, shielding her from the cameras. Miriam was still scared, but she was beginning to learn. One evening, as she walked through the mansion's grand corridors, Miriam noticed the staff watching her differently now. Some were curious, others resentful. Sarah was the worst. "Look at you," Sarah said with a smirk. "Walking around like you own the place. You do realize the Wainwrights will crush you, right? And when they do, you'll wish you'd listened to me." She tapped the pocket where Miriam knew the letter still was. "What do you even want, Sarah?" Miriam asked, frustrated. Sarah leaned closer, her voice low. "I want a piece of what's coming. Because if you think you're the only one with secrets, Miriam, you're wrong." Before Miriam could respond, James entered the hallway, holding a thick envelope. "The court date is set," he told her. "And we're going to need every bit of strength we have. The battle starts tomorrow." Miriam felt her stomach twist. Tomorrow, she would step into a courtroom to face the family who wanted to destroy her. The courtroom was larger and more intimidating than anything Miriam had ever seen. Polished wood panels gleamed under bright lights, and a sea of stern faces filled the gallery. She sat at the defendant's table with James at her side, clutching her hands tightly in her lap. Across the room, Charles and Helena sat confidently with their expensive legal team. Helena's diamond necklace glittered as she leaned close to her husband, whispering something that made him smirk. Miriam felt small, but James leaned toward her. "Stay calm," he whispered. "The truth is on our side." The judge, a tall woman with sharp features, entered the room. "Court is now in session," she announced. The Wainwright family's lawyer went first. He stood tall, pacing slowly as he addressed the judge. "This case is about manipulation," he said. "A vulnerable, elderly woman was taken advantage of by her housemaid, who sought to inherit a £30 million estate. Lady Catherine Sinclair was ill, frail, and easily influenced. We will prove that Miriam Adeyemi preyed on her kindness for financial gain." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Miriam's chest tightened. The lawyer then called his first witness, Helena. She walked confidently to the stand, her voice sweet but dripping with false concern. "My aunt was not in her right mind," Helena said. "She barely knew what day it was. And Miriam, she was always around, whispering in her ear, controlling who she saw. It's obvious what happened." James stood for the cross-examination. "Mrs. Wainwright," he said calmly, "is it true that you and your husband had almost no contact with Lady Catherine in the last 2 years of her life?" Helena hesitated, her eyes flickering. "We were busy spending her money before she was even gone?" James cut in sharply. The gallery erupted in whispers. Helena's face flushed red as the judge called for order. Next came Charles, who tried to paint Miriam as an outsider who didn't belong. "She was just the maid," he said bitterly. "Why would my aunt leave her everything? It makes no sense unless she was manipulated." James rose again. "So you believe Lady Catherine was incapable of making her own decisions?" Charles nodded firmly. "Absolutely." James pulled out a stack of letters. These were written by Lady Catherine just months before her death. They show that she was fully aware of her choices and believed in Miriam's loyalty. "Would you like me to read them aloud, Mr. Wainwright?" Charles shifted uncomfortably, his confidence cracking. When it was Miriam's turn to testify, her heart pounded so hard she thought she might faint. She stepped up to the stand, her voice trembling as James guided her through questions. "Did you ever ask Lady Catherine for money?" James asked. "No," Miriam said firmly. "She was like family to me. I never expected this." "Did you love her?" "Yes," Miriam whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "She was the only person who ever treated me with kindness when I came to this country." James nodded softly and turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this isn't about greed. This is about a woman who saw past status and wealth and rewarded loyalty. The Wainwrights are the ones motivated by money." The session adjourned for the day, but Miriam knew the battle was far from over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them again, shouting questions. "Are you afraid of losing everything, Miriam?" Did you trick Lady Catherine into giving you her fortune? James shielded her from the crowd. No comments today, he said. Back in the mansion, Miriam collapsed onto the couch. I can't do this, James, she whispered. They hate me. Everyone hates me. James sat across from her, his expression calm but serious. You're stronger than you think. But Miriam, there's something you should know. Sarah has been meeting with the Wainwrights behind your back. Miriam's head shot up. What? She's feeding them information, James said. And if she has that letter, they could twist it against you. Miriam felt the blood drain from her face. Miriam sat rigid on the edge of the couch, her hands gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles turned white. James's words replayed in her mind. Sarah is meeting with the Wainwrights. Why would she do that? Miriam asked, her voice shaking. James sighed. Because she wants something from you, and the Wainwrights have promised her more. They're desperate, Miriam. If they can twist that letter into evidence that you manipulated Lady Catherine, they will. Miriam felt sick. That letter wasn't just important. It was her last connection to Lady Catherine. She had to get it back. The next day in court, the Wainwrights' lawyer brought up a new piece of evidence. Your Honor, we have obtained a letter allegedly written by Lady Catherine in the final days of her life, he announced dramatically. We believe it will show she was confused and under undue influence from Ms. Adeyemi. Miriam's breath hitched. The lawyer held up a sealed envelope, the same one Miriam had been searching for. We will present it at the next session, he said smugly. James leaned toward Miriam. We need to stop them from twisting that letter. I'll request it be reviewed privately by the judge first. But Miriam's heart was pounding too hard to focus. Sarah gave it to them, she really did. That night, James stayed at the mansion to review documents. Miriam sat at the dining table, unable to eat. The grand chandelier above her cast long shadows, making the room feel colder than ever. Mr. Hargreaves entered quietly. Miriam, he said, placing a stack of old envelopes on the table. These arrived for Lady Catherine over the years. I thought they might help. Miriam opened one, her eyes scanning the neat handwriting. It was a letter from Catherine to an old friend, dated months before her death. Miriam is the only one I can trust. My family cares only for the inheritance. She has been my rock in this lonely house. Miriam's throat tightened. She read another. Charles and Helena visit only to ask for money. I fear what they'll do when I'm gone. Miriam deserves more than the life she has. Tears blurred her vision as she opened letter after letter. Each one revealed Catherine's growing disappointment in her family and her deep trust in Miriam. The next morning in court, James stood tall as he presented the stack of letters to the judge. Your Honor, these letters were written by Lady Catherine long before the will was signed, he said firmly. They show that she was fully aware of her choices and had every reason to leave her estate to Ms. Adeyemi. The Wainwrights' lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced him. We will review both sets of letters and determine their validity, she said. Helena's face twisted with anger. Outside the courthouse, James turned to Miriam. This is a breakthrough, he said. If the judge accepts these letters, it could prove Catherine's intentions once and for all. But Miriam couldn't shake the fear gnawing at her. What if the other letter, the one Sarah stole, says something different, she whispered. James looked at her gravely. Then we'll fight it. But Miriam, you need to prepare yourself. Sarah isn't done yet. And the Wainwrights are running out of patience. That evening, Miriam returned to the mansion exhausted. As she climbed the stairs to her room, she saw a shadow move in the hallway. Sarah, she called out. There was no response. She stepped closer and saw Sarah standing in the doorway of her room, holding her phone. You should have listened to me, Sarah said with a chilling smile. Because tomorrow, the world is going to see what's really in that letter. Miriam's heart pounded so hard it drowned out every sound in the hallway. Sarah, please, she said softly, stepping toward her. What are you talking about? Sarah leaned casually against the doorway, her smile sharp. The Wainwrights are going to release the letter to the press tomorrow. And when they do, you'll look like the biggest fraud London has ever seen. Miriam shook her head. That's not true. Lady Catherine trusted me. Sarah interrupted with a laugh. Trusted you? Maybe she did. But the way that letter is written, it's open to interpretation. They'll twist every word to make it look like you manipulated her. And when they win, I'll be the one they thank for helping them. Miriam felt the floor tilt under her feet. Why are you doing this, Sarah? We work together. I thought we were friends. Sarah's expression hardened. Friends? You got £30 million while I'm still scrubbing floors. I was never going to watch you walk away with everything. The Wainwrights promised me a cut if I helped them take you down. Miriam stepped forward, her voice trembling. Please, Sarah. Give me the letter back. It's all I have left from Lady Catherine. Sarah's eyes glimmered with cold amusement. Then you should have thought about that before you ignored me. It's too late now. She turned to leave, but Miriam grabbed her arm. Sarah. Sarah spun around, her voice dropping to a hiss. Touch me again, and I'll tell everyone you threatened me. Then you'll lose everything even faster. Miriam froze, her hand falling to her side. Sarah walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a final warning. The next morning, James arrived at the mansion early. He found Miriam sitting on the edge of her bed, her face pale. She gave them the letter, Miriam whispered. And now they're going to use it against me. James frowned. We can't let that happen. We'll petition the court to seal the contents before the media gets hold of it. But what if it's already too late? Miriam asked, her voice breaking. James placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Then we fight back harder. Do you understand me? We don't give up. Later that day, they returned to the courtroom. As soon as they stepped inside, Miriam felt the eyes of the crowd burning into her. The Wainwrights looked victorious, their lawyer holding the infamous letter like a weapon. Your Honor, the lawyer said dramatically, we now present a letter written by Lady Catherine in her final days, one that clearly shows Ms. Adeyemi's undue influence over her. The judge accepted the envelope and read it silently. Miriam's stomach churned as the seconds ticked by. Finally, the judge looked up. This letter will be admitted as evidence, she said. The Wainwrights smiled. Miriam's breath caught in her throat. As soon as the session ended, James pulled her aside. We need to prepare for the worst, he said. If the Wainwrights spin this letter correctly, the judge could lean in their favor. And if that happens, Miriam didn't need him to finish. She could lose everything. That night, she lay awake in the dark mansion, listening to every creak of the floorboards. She felt more alone than ever. But just as sleep finally began to creep in, a knock sounded on her door. She opened it to find Sarah standing there, holding her phone. I have something to show you, Sarah said, her smile wicked. And when you see it, you'll know your life is over. She pressed play. On the screen was a grainy video of Miriam standing close to Lady Catherine's hospital bed, whispering something into her ear. The video was heavily edited, making it look like Miriam was coercing the old woman. Miriam gasped. That's not what happened. You doctored this. Sarah shrugged. It doesn't matter. Tomorrow the Wainwrights will release this to the press, and you'll be finished. Miriam's legs went weak. She barely heard Sarah's footsteps fading as the door shut. She sat there, shaking, staring at the dark room around her. How could she win now? Miriam sat on the edge of her bed all night, the glow of Sarah's phone screen still burning in her mind. The doctored video was convincing, and she knew exactly what the Wainwrights would do with it. If the press got hold of it, her name would be ruined forever. By morning, she felt hollow. She didn't even notice James enter the room until he knelt in front of her. Miriam, what happened? He asked, concerned. You look like you haven't slept in days. She finally handed him her phone and told him everything. James watched the video with a grim expression. They edited this, he said flatly. The audio doesn't even match the video. I know, Miriam whispered, her voice shaking. But it doesn't matter. Everyone will believe it. James shook his head. Not if we get ahead of it first. Later that day, James arranged a private meeting with an old friend, a digital forensics expert named Olivia. She worked in a sleek office filled with high-tech monitors. Olivia watched the video 3 times before leaning back in her chair. This is a hatchet job, she said. I can see at least 7 different edits. Give me a few hours, and I can trace where it came from. Please, James said. We don't have much time. As Olivia got to work, Miriam sat in the corner, twisting her hands together. For the first time in weeks, she felt a small flicker of hope. Meanwhile, the Wainwrights were becoming more aggressive. Their lawyer filed new motions, accusing Miriam of exploiting Lady Catherine and demanding immediate control of the estate. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted accusations as Miriam walked past. Did you force Lady Catherine to change her will? Are you afraid of going to prison? James shielded her from the cameras, but Miriam could feel the weight of public judgment pressing down on her. That evening, Olivia called with a breakthrough. The video came from inside the mansion, she said. Whoever made it had access to the internal security cameras. Miriam's stomach dropped. Sarah, she whispered. James nodded. It has to be. She's the only one with that kind of access and motive. The next morning, Miriam confronted Sarah in the hallway. "Why are you doing this to me?" Miriam demanded, her voice trembling with anger. "You know that video is fake." Sarah smiled coldly. "Because you have something I want. And until I get it, you'll keep losing." Before Miriam could reply, James appeared behind her. "We know you made that video, Sarah. We've traced it back to the mansion's security system. If you don't confess, we'll hand the evidence over to the police." For the first time, Sarah's smirk faltered. "You wouldn't dare," she said, her voice uncertain. "Try me," James replied, stepping closer. But before Sarah could respond, a knock echoed at the mansion's door. Mr. Hargreaves opened it to find two uniformed police officers standing on the doorstep. "Is Ms. Miriam Adeyemi here?" one of them asked. Miriam stepped forward nervously. "Yes, that's me." The officer pulled a document from his coat. "We have a warrant to bring you in for questioning. There are new allegations of financial fraud." Miriam's knees buckled. James caught her before she fell. "This is a setup," James said through gritted teeth. "We're coming with you." The officers nodded. "She'll have to answer for herself at the station." Miriam's hands trembled as they led her out of the mansion into the flashing lights of the press. As the police car door slammed shut behind her, Miriam's mind reeled. Who else was working against her? The police car crawled through the streets of London, flashing lights scattering the crowd of reporters gathered outside the mansion gates. Miriam sat in the back seat, hands trembling in her lap. Every camera she saw felt like it was capturing her shame. James sat beside her, jaw clenched. "Don't say anything until we speak to your lawyer," he whispered. Miriam nodded weakly, but her mind was spinning. Financial fraud. She had never touched Lady Catherine's money. She couldn't even access it with the estate frozen. At the station, Miriam was taken into a small interview room. Two detectives sat across from her, a tape recorder on the table between them. "Ms. Adeyemi," one detective began, "we've received allegations that you coerced Lady Catherine into transferring funds before her death. We need to know exactly what happened." "I didn't do anything," Miriam said quickly. "I loved Lady Catherine. She was like family to me." The detective glanced at a file. "We have testimony suggesting otherwise." "From who?" James asked sharply. The detective didn't answer, but Miriam knew. "Sarah," she whispered. James leaned forward. "This is a setup, and you know it. We have evidence proving one of the Wainwright's allies doctored a video and is lying to the court. If you push this, we'll take it public." The detectives exchanged looks. "You're free to go for now," the lead detective said finally. "But don't leave London." Outside the station, the media frenzy was worse than ever. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted over one another. "Are you guilty, Miriam? Did you steal from Lady Catherine's accounts? Will you return to Nigeria if you lose the case?" Miriam froze, blinded by the flashing lights. James stepped in front of her. "No comment," he said firmly as he guided her through the crowd. That evening, James sat her down in the mansion's study. "They're trying to break you," he said. "If the public turns against you, the judge might feel pressured to side with the Wainwrights." "I can't take this anymore," Miriam whispered. "I can't even step outside without being attacked." James looked at her seriously. "Then we have to fight back. We're not just going to defend you anymore. We're going to expose the Wainwrights for who they really are." "How?" Miriam asked. James leaned back in his chair. "By showing the world their greed. And we'll start with Lady Catherine's letters. We'll release some of them to the press, the ones that prove she wanted you to inherit everything." Miriam hesitated. "Wouldn't that make things worse?" "It'll change the narrative," James said. "Right now they control the story. We're going to take that away from them." The next morning, the headlines were different. "Housemaid was Lady Catherine's only true family, letters reveal." "Wainwright greed exposed, heiress wanted maid to inherit estate." Public opinion began to shift. Reporters stopped shouting accusations and started asking about the Wainwrights' motives. But the family wasn't about to give up. That afternoon, Helena appeared on live television with tears streaming down her face. "My aunt was vulnerable," she told the interviewer. "And Miriam took advantage of her. We just want justice for Lady Catherine." Miriam watched the broadcast from the mansion, her stomach twisting. "They'll stop at nothing," James muttered. "We need more than sympathy. We need proof they're lying." As he spoke, Olivia called with an update. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "I've found evidence the Wainwrights have been hiding massive financial fraud in Catherine's investment accounts. If we can link it to them, the entire case could turn in our favor." Miriam's eyes widened. What kind of fraud? Olivia hesitated. The kind that could send them to prison. Miriam stood by the mansion's tall windows, staring out at the crowd of reporters still gathered beyond the gates. But something felt different now. They weren't shouting accusations. Some even smiled politely when they caught a glimpse of her. The tide was beginning to turn. James entered the room, carrying a folder thick with documents. "Miriam, I want you to look at something," he said. She hesitated. "More legal papers?" "Not just that," James replied. "This is about you learning how to protect yourself. If you're going to inherit this estate, you need to understand how power works." Over the next few days, James taught Miriam how to navigate the complex world of wealth and influence. He showed her how to read financial statements, how to respond calmly to aggressive reporters, and how to handle public appearances. At first, Miriam felt completely out of place. She still thought of herself as the housemaid who served tea in the background. But James was patient. "You belong here just as much as anyone else," he told her. Lady Catherine believed that, and so should you. The first test came when Miriam agreed to a carefully planned press conference. Standing at a podium with cameras flashing, her palms sweaty, she faced the journalists. "Lady Catherine was more than an employer to me," Miriam said softly but clearly. "She was family. I never asked her for anything. She chose to leave me her estate, and I will honor her wishes." A reporter asked, "Do you think the Wainwrights are lying about you?" Miriam paused, remembering James's advice. "I think Lady Catherine knew who truly cared about her," she said carefully. "I will let the truth speak for itself." The conference ended with applause from some reporters. James gave her a proud nod. "You were brilliant," he said as they left the room. Miriam allowed herself a small smile. For the first time, she felt in control. But their fight was far from over. Olivia called later that evening with another update. "I've dug deeper into the Wainwrights' accounts," she said. "They've been embezzling money from Catherine's investments for years. If we reveal this, they'll have more to worry about than just the inheritance." James frowned. "We need to be careful. If we show our hand too soon, they'll bury the evidence." Miriam stepped forward. "No," she said firmly. "We use it. They've been trying to destroy me since the beginning. It's time they face the consequences." James looked at her, surprised by the steel in her voice. The next day, Miriam attended another court session. This time, she walked in with her head high, ignoring the whispers from the gallery. Helena watched her from across the room, her eyes narrowing. "She's different," Helena muttered to Charles. "She's not scared anymore." Charles scowled. "She should be. We still have the letter and the video. That's all we need to win." But Miriam didn't even look their way. She focused on James, who leaned close and whispered, "We'll present the financial evidence when the time is right. They won't see it coming." That night, back at the mansion, Miriam sat in Lady Catherine's old study. She ran her fingers over the spines of the books lining the shelves, remembering all the times she had dusted this room as a maid. Now it was hers. But she didn't feel like celebrating. She knew the Wainwrights were planning something. And Sarah? Sarah had been unusually quiet for the past 2 days. As Miriam turned to leave, she saw a folded note slipped under the study door. She picked it up and unfolded it slowly. "Meet me at the old garden shed at midnight. Come alone if you want the truth about Sarah. A friend." Miriam's breath caught. Miriam clutched the note, her mind spinning. A friend? Who could it be? And what did they mean by the truth about Sarah? James was in the next room going over files, but Miriam hesitated to show him the note. What if it was nothing? What if it was a trap? She slipped the paper into her pocket and tried to focus on the coming court session. The courtroom was tense that morning. The Wainwrights' lawyer stood tall, his voice booming as he presented their arguments. "Your Honor, the evidence against Ms. Adeyemi is clear. Lady Catherine was old, confused, and easily influenced. We urge the court to place the estate back under the rightful family's control." Miriam sat still, her face calm even though her heart was racing. James rose next, his tone steady and powerful. "The Wainwrights would have you believe that loyalty and kindness are suspicious traits. But we have proven through Lady Catherine's own letters that she was of sound mind and trusted Ms. Adeyemi fully. Furthermore, we have uncovered troubling inconsistencies in the Wainwrights' handling of Catherine's investments." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Inconsistencies?" "Yes, Your Honor," James said, placing a thick folder on the bench. "We request a full audit of the accounts in question. Until that is complete, we ask that Ms. Adeyemi be allowed to remain in possession of the estate." The Wainwright's lawyer sputtered. This is outrageous. But the judge held up a hand. Request granted. Ms. Adeyemi will remain in possession of the estate, pending the results of the audit. Miriam exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. It was only a temporary victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Back at the mansion, James smiled at her. You did well today. We're finally making progress. But Miriam couldn't shake the memory of the note. Midnight was approaching, and she had to decide whether to go. At 11:45 p.m., she slipped out of her room quietly. The mansion was silent, the staff asleep. The garden shed was dark and hidden behind the rose bushes at the edge of the property. Miriam's footsteps crunched on the gravel path as she approached. She pushed the door open slowly. Hello, she whispered. A figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Mr. Hargreaves, the butler. Miriam, he said quietly. I'm sorry to bring you out here, but you needed to know. Sarah isn't working alone. Miriam frowned. What do you mean? Hargreaves lowered his voice. I've seen her meeting with someone at night. One of the Wainwright's lawyers. They're planning something big, and it's not just about the letter. They want to destroy your reputation completely. Miriam's heart pounded. Why are you telling me this? Hargreaves sighed. Because Lady Catherine trusted you. I can't watch them tear you apart like this. Before Miriam could respond, a rustle outside the shed made them both jump. Hargreaves stepped toward the door, but it suddenly burst open. Sarah stood there, her eyes blazing. So this is how it is, she spat. Plotting against me behind my back? Miriam stepped back. Sarah, please. But Sarah cut her off. You think you've won? You think today's little victory in court means anything? Tomorrow, everything changes. She stormed off into the night, leaving Miriam shaken. The next morning, James burst into the study with grim news. The Wainwrights have filed a new motion, he said. They're trying to have you removed from the mansion entirely. And if they succeed, we lose our strongest position in the case. Miriam's stomach dropped. James, she whispered. What if Sarah helps them again? James's jaw tightened. Then we're going to need evidence strong enough to destroy their entire case. And we need it now. Miriam sat at the head of the long dining table that evening, the mansion's glittering chandelier casting shadows across the walls. The table was empty, her plate untouched. The staff avoided the dining room now. Even Mr. Hargreaves seemed distant since Sarah's outburst in the garden shed. The silence was suffocating. She looked around the massive house and felt no comfort in it. Yes, the court had allowed her to stay temporarily, but the estate felt more like a cage than a home. Cameras and reporters lingered outside the gates every day. Neighbors still whispered behind her back, and even the staff she once worked alongside now treated her like a stranger. Miriam had never felt more alone. James arrived later, carrying new documents. His face was drawn and tired. They're pushing hard, Miriam, he said, dropping the papers on the table. The Wainwrights' lawyers filed another motion this morning, and Sarah is on their witness list. If she testifies, they'll use her to claim you manipulated Lady Catherine from the start. Miriam rubbed her temples. She's already destroyed me with that fake video. What more could she possibly do? James hesitated. They'll attack your past. Your immigration status. Anything they can dig up. Miriam felt the weight of his words pressing down on her. James, she whispered, I'm so tired. Every day I wake up wondering what they'll try next. Maybe I should just give up. James leaned forward, his voice firm. No, that's exactly what they want. You're winning this case because you're standing your ground. If you walk away now, they'll destroy Lady Catherine's memory along with you. Miriam blinked back tears. But at what cost? I don't even know who I can trust anymore. Sarah's betrayal hurt more than anything. James's expression softened. I know, but you're not alone, Miriam. I'm with you, and so is Olivia. And Mr. Hargreaves, despite everything, still believes in you. Miriam nodded, but the loneliness lingered like a shadow. The following morning, James arranged a private strategy meeting with Olivia in the mansion's study. She brought new findings from her financial investigation. The Wainwrights siphoned millions from Lady Catherine's investments years before she died, Olivia explained, pointing at charts on her laptop. If we can prove it, the judge will see their true motives. But we need undeniable evidence, James said. If it's even slightly circumstantial, they'll dismiss it. Olivia nodded. I'm working on it, but I'll need more time. Miriam listened quietly. She knew they were close, but the thought of Sarah taking the stand terrified her. That night, as Miriam walked through the halls, she noticed Sarah standing near the servants' staircase, speaking on the phone in hushed tones. "Yes," Sarah whispered. "I'll be ready. She won't see it coming." Miriam froze, her heart hammering in her chest. When Sarah turned and saw her, she smirked. "Enjoy the mansion while you still can," she said, brushing past her. Later, Miriam sat alone in Lady Catherine's old bedroom, staring at a framed photo of the woman who had once trusted her completely. What would she do if she were here now? Miriam wondered. She knew the answer. Catherine would fight, not just for herself, but for what was right. Miriam wiped her tears and stood up. "James," she said when she found him downstairs, "we need to expose them. Not just in court. We need the world to see the truth about the Wainwrights. And I'm ready to do whatever it takes." James looked at her, a flicker of pride in his eyes. "Then we'll start tomorrow. But be warned, Miriam, if we push them into a corner, they'll become even more dangerous." Miriam nodded. "Let them try." The next morning, as they prepared for court, a package arrived at the mansion with no return address. Miriam opened it and gasped. Inside was a USB drive and a single note. "This will destroy Sarah and the Wainwrights. Use it wisely." Miriam held the small USB drive in her trembling hands. The note's words echoed in her mind. "This will destroy Sarah and the Wainwrights." James took it from her carefully. "We can't rush this," he said. "It could be a trap. We'll have Olivia check it for viruses first." But Miriam couldn't stop the flicker of hope that rose in her chest. Could this be the evidence they needed? That afternoon, Olivia arrived and plugged the USB drive into her laptop. Lines of code and folders flashed on the screen. "It's clean," she said finally. "And there's a video file here. You'll want to see this." She pressed play. The footage showed Sarah in a meeting with Helena and Charles at a luxury restaurant. Sarah was laughing, clinking glasses with them as they discussed their plan. "She doesn't stand a chance," Helena said on the recording. "Once we use the video and the letter, the judge will have no choice but to strip her of everything." "And I get my share, right?" Sarah asked. "Of course," Charles replied smugly. Miriam's jaw tightened. The proof was undeniable. Sarah was working with the Wainwrights to frame her. James looked at her gravely. "This is enough to destroy their credibility in court. But once we use it, the gloves are off. They'll fight even dirtier." Miriam nodded. "Then we use it. Lady Catherine deserves justice." But before they could act, Miriam received a surprise visitor that evening. As she stepped into the foyer, she saw a familiar face standing by the door. Ada, her childhood friend from Lagos. "Miriam," Ada exclaimed, rushing forward to hug her. "I came as soon as I heard what was happening." Miriam clung to her friend, tears stinging her eyes. "How did you even know where to find me?" "A mutual friend back home told me," Ada explained. "I wanted to remind you who you are. This mansion, this money, it's not what makes you strong, Miriam. You were strong long before this." That night, Miriam and Ada sat together in the servants' kitchen. The same kitchen where Miriam had spent so many lonely evenings before Catherine died. "I keep thinking I don't belong here," Miriam admitted quietly. "That I'll never fit into this world of lawyers and luxury." Ada shook her head. "You're not fighting to fit in. You're fighting because it's right. Catherine saw your heart, and that's why she trusted you. Don't let them take that from you." Miriam smiled faintly. "You sound like Catherine." Ada squeezed her hand. "Then listen to me. Don't give up. Show them who you are." The next morning, Miriam stood taller as she prepared for court. Ada's visit had given her strength. James noticed the change in her. "You're ready," he said. Miriam nodded. "We're using the footage. Today, the Wainwrights will see what it feels like to be exposed." But just as they were about to leave for the courthouse, an urgent call came from Olivia. "You need to be careful," she warned. "The Wainwrights know we have something. Someone tried to hack my computer last night. They're desperate, Miriam." Miriam tightened her grip on her coat. "Good," she said softly. "Let them be desperate." As they stepped out of the mansion gates, the crowd of reporters surged forward. "Do you have new evidence, Miriam? Will this be the final blow to the Wainwrights' case?" Miriam looked straight at the cameras. "Today," she said calmly, "the truth will come out." But as they walked toward the courthouse, she saw Sarah standing at the far end of the street, her expression pale and panicked. And Miriam knew something was about to happen. The courthouse loomed ahead, its stone columns rising like an impenetrable fortress. Miriam tightened her grip on her handbag, her heart pounding as James guided her through the crowd. But she couldn't stop glancing back at Sarah, who was still lurking at the far end of the street, her pale face partially hidden by the brim of a hat. "Ignore her," James said quietly. She's already cornered. Once we show the video, she won't be able to touch you. Miriam nodded, but unease gnawed at her stomach. Inside the courthouse, they were stopped by a tall man in an expensive black coat. He had slicked back hair, a sharp jawline, and an unnervingly calm smile. Ms. Adeyemi, he said smoothly, stepping into her path. My name is Victor Kane. I represent interests who want to see this little dispute resolved quietly. James stiffened. She's not interested. Step aside. But Victor didn't move. I'm offering protection, Miriam. The Wainwrights are desperate, and desperate people can be dangerous. You have something they want, and I can ensure they leave you alone. Miriam frowned. What do you want in return? Victor's smile widened. A fair share. Let's say 10 million pounds. You win your case, you get your fortune, and I keep the Wainwrights from ruining you. James bristled. This is extortion. Victor shrugged. Call it what you like. But think carefully, Ms. Adeyemi. You've made powerful enemies. Without me, I can't guarantee your safety. He slipped a card into her hand and walked away without another word. In the courtroom, Miriam sat at the table, her mind still reeling from Victor's offer. James noticed. Don't even think about it, he whispered. That man's a predator. He'll bleed you dry and disappear. But what if he's right? Miriam whispered. What if the Wainwrights do something worse? James shook his head. We don't negotiate with threats. We win this the right way. The trial resumed, and James wasted no time presenting the video evidence. The room went silent as the footage played, showing Sarah laughing with Helena and Charles, openly discussing their plot. Gasps erupted from the gallery. The judge's eyes narrowed as she watched the screen. This evidence raises serious questions about the credibility of key witnesses, the judge said sharply. I will be reviewing the case very carefully. The Wainwrights' lawyer looked rattled, but Charles was furious. He slammed his fist on the table. This is illegal. That footage was stolen. James stood calmly. It was anonymously delivered to us, Your Honor, and it clearly shows witness collusion. We believe it speaks for itself. As the session adjourned, Sarah fled the courtroom in tears, chased by reporters demanding answers. Miriam watched her go, a swirl of emotions tightening in her chest. She had once trusted Sarah, but now that bond was shattered beyond repair. James turned to Miriam. We've just shifted the entire case in our favor. But we need to be ready. They won't take this lying down. Later that evening, Miriam found Victor Kane waiting for her outside the courthouse. You played your card today, he said, his voice low and smooth. But the Wainwrights are cornered animals now. Do you really think they'll go quietly? I'm not giving you 10 million pounds, Miriam said firmly. Victor smiled thinly. That's a shame. Because I'm the only one who can stop what's coming next. He stepped closer, his eyes cold. Think about it, Ms. Adeyemi. Before it's too late. That night, Miriam sat in Lady Catherine's study with Ada at her side. What if he's right? Miriam asked softly. What if something happens to me before the case is over? Ada took her hand. Then we fight harder. You've come too far to be scared into giving up now. Catherine would never forgive you if you did. Miriam nodded, trying to steady her breathing. But deep down, she knew Victor's warning wasn't an empty threat. Miriam awoke the next morning to the sound of her phone buzzing endlessly. Dozens of missed calls and messages flashed across the screen. Have you seen the news? James's voice was sharp when she answered. No, why? What happened? Miriam asked, her voice trembling. Turn on the TV, he said. Miriam grabbed the remote, her heart hammering. The screen lit up with a breaking news report. Exclusive video. African housemaid admits manipulating heiress for fortune. A heavily edited video played, showing Miriam's face blurred with false captions. The audio was spliced together from previous conversations, making it sound as though she was admitting to tricking Lady Catherine. Miriam felt her knees give way. That's not real, she cried. I know, James said. But they've timed it perfectly. It's everywhere, TV, social media, even international outlets. They're trying to poison public opinion before the next court date. By the time James arrived at the mansion, reporters were camped outside again, shouting accusations. Did you trick Lady Catherine, Miriam? Are you a gold digger? Will you return the money to the Wainwright family? Miriam couldn't bear to look at the cameras. She hurried inside, her face hidden beneath a scarf. This is exactly what Victor Kane warned us about, she said bitterly as James closed the door behind them. They're cornered, and now they're trying to destroy me completely. James paced the room. We have to counter this. Olivia's already analyzing the video for edits, but it might take days. Until then, we need to stay ahead of the narrative. How? Miriam asked. By controlling the message, James replied. We'll call a press conference this evening. You'll deny the allegations and present evidence proving their smear campaign. Miriam hesitated. I'm not sure I can face them again, James. They hate me, and now the public does too. James looked at her firmly. If you hide, they win. As the day wore on, the attacks escalated. Talk shows debated Miriam's guilt. Hashtags calling for her deportation trended online. Even some neighbors sent hateful notes to the mansion. Ada stayed by Miriam's side, reminding her of who she was. This is what they want, to break you, she said. But you're stronger than this, Miriam. Remember where you came from. That evening, Miriam stood behind the podium at the press conference. Cameras flashed, and the room buzzed with tension. My name is Miriam Adeyemi, she began, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her stomach. The video circulating online is fake. It was created by the Wainwright family and their allies to destroy me. I will not let them dishonor Lady Catherine's memory with lies. Reporters shouted questions, but Miriam held up a hand. I have evidence that proves the Wainwrights have been embezzling from Lady Catherine's estate for years, she continued. And soon the court will see it too. The press conference ended with a mix of applause and doubt. But Miriam had taken back a sliver of control. That night, Olivia called with good news. I've confirmed that the smear video was doctored, she said. I can prove it in court. Miriam felt hope surge again. But just as she was about to tell James, the mansion's doorbell rang. Mr. Hargreaves opened it, revealing 2 uniformed police officers. We're here with a warrant, one officer said. We've received a tip that Ms. Adeyemi has been hiding stolen property from Lady Catherine's estate. Miriam froze. What stolen property? The officer's expression was cold. We'll search the premises and find out. Miriam stood frozen in the mansion's grand foyer as the police officers stepped inside. Their boots echoed against the marble floors while Mr. Hargreaves looked on nervously. You can't just come in here, James protested, holding out his hands. We have a valid warrant, sir, one officer said calmly, flashing the paperwork. Step aside. James clenched his jaw but moved back. Miriam, stay with me, he whispered. The officers split up, combing through each room. Miriam's heart pounded harder with every sound of drawers opening and doors slamming. This is another trap, just like the video. After 20 agonizing minutes, one officer called out from upstairs. We found something. Miriam's breath hitched as they all hurried to Lady Catherine's old bedroom. The officer was holding a small jewelry box, one Miriam had never seen before. Inside were diamond necklaces, gold bracelets, and several stacks of cash. This was reported missing from Lady Catherine's safe months ago, the officer said. And it was hidden under your bed, Ms. Adeyemi. Miriam's knees nearly gave out. I've never seen that before, she stammered. James stepped forward. This is a setup, he said firmly. We'll prove it. But the officer's face remained cold. We'll need Ms. Adeyemi to come with us for questioning. Outside, the reporters were waiting. Cameras flashed as Miriam was escorted into the police car, her face pale and tear-streaked. She's guilty, someone shouted from the crowd. James climbed in beside her. Don't say a word, he whispered. At the station, Miriam sat silently in the interrogation room as James spoke with the detectives. This is the 3rd false allegation in 2 weeks, James argued. You're being manipulated by the Wainwrights. We have to follow protocol, the detective replied. But I'll admit, something about this doesn't add up. Hours later, Miriam was released on bail. She returned to the mansion exhausted, her nerves frayed. James was waiting for her in the study with Olivia, who had a grim expression. I found something, Olivia said, turning her laptop toward them. While analyzing the Wainwrights' financial accounts, I discovered a pattern. They've been funneling money into offshore accounts using fake charities for years. And it's all tied to Lady Catherine's estate. Miriam's eyes widened. So they were stealing from her even before she died. Exactly, Olivia said. And here's the twist. If we can prove this, it won't just save your case. The Wainwrights could face criminal charges. James nodded. But we need a smoking gun. Something undeniable. As they spoke, Mr. Hargreaves entered quietly, holding an envelope. This arrived for you, he said. Miriam took the envelope and opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single photograph. Sarah, sitting in a lavish hotel suite with Helena and Charles, handing them what looked like the same jewelry box planted under Miriam's bed. On the back was a handwritten note. The truth is closer than you think. Meet me at Westminster Bridge at midnight, come alone. Miriam's heart raced. James frowned. This could be a trap. But what if it's not? Miriam whispered. What if this is the evidence we need? That night, Miriam stood on Westminster Bridge, the wind biting through her coat. The river shimmered darkly below as the city lights flickered in the distance. A figure approached slowly, their hood pulled low over their face. Miriam, the voice said softly. She gasped. It was Sarah. The cold wind whipped across Westminster Bridge as Miriam stood frozen, staring at Sarah. You, Miriam whispered, her breath visible in the night air. Why did you call me here? Sarah pulled down her hood, her eyes darting nervously from side to side. Because I can't do this anymore, she said, her voice shaking. The Wainwrights, they've gone too far. And I'm scared for my life. Miriam clenched her fists. You set me up. You gave them the letter. You helped them destroy me with that fake video. I know. Sarah cut in, tears streaming down her face. I thought I was just helping them win the case. But Charles and Helena, they're dangerous, Miriam. That jewelry box they planted? They told me if I didn't go along with it, I'd end up gone. Miriam's chest tightened. Why should I believe you now? Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive. Because this will end them, she whispered. It has everything, emails, bank records, proof they stole millions from Lady Catherine and framed you. I copied it from their lawyer's private server. It's enough to send them to prison for life. Miriam stared at the flash drive, her heart pounding. Why give it to me? Why not go to the police? Sarah shook her head. Because they have people everywhere. If they find out I betrayed them. Suddenly, a pair of headlights appeared at the far end of the bridge. A black SUV screeched to a stop, and two men in dark coats stepped out. Sarah's face went pale. It's them, she whispered. Who? Miriam asked, her voice rising in panic. Charles sent them. They'll kill me if they find out I gave you this. Sarah shoved the flash drive into Miriam's hand. Run! Before Miriam could react, the men were already charging toward them. Sarah turned and bolted in the opposite direction, her footsteps echoing across the bridge. Miriam, one of the men barked. She clutched the flash drive and sprinted into the shadows, her heart hammering in her chest. Back at the mansion, Miriam slammed the door behind her, gasping for breath. James and Ada ran to her side. What happened? Where's Sarah? James asked. Miriam opened her palm, revealing the flash drive. She gave me this. She said it has everything. The proof we need to bring the Wainwrights down. James's eyes widened. Then this is it. This could end the case. But before he could say more, Miriam's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. A single text message lit up the display. If you use that flash drive, Sarah dies. And you're next. Miriam's hands trembled as she looked up at James. What do we do? She whispered. Outside the mansion, an engine idled softly in the dark street. Inside the car, Charles Wainwright sat in the back seat, his eyes cold. She won't dare use it, he said to the man in the driver's seat. But if she does? He didn't finish the sentence. Miriam stood in the center of Lady Catherine's study, clutching the flash drive, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. If she used it, Sarah could be killed, and so could she. If she didn't, she would lose everything. James placed a hand on her shoulder. Miriam, we have to decide now. Miriam swallowed hard, staring at the flash drive as her heartbeat thundered in her ears. The choice before her could change everything.